I shoved the little shit out of the way as I strode towards the door, ignoring his whine of protest. I slammed the door, not bothering to say goodbye. I had no patience for that creepy kid. I hopped into the waiting car, and tuned out the aggrieved sighs of my parents, together with their usual pleas for me to please treat Mike better, that he was my little brother after all. After my continued silence, they soon gave up on their nagging. I jumped out of the car the moment we pulled up outside the school, turned back for a quick yell of thanks, and hurried to basketball practice. I was just in time. A couple hours later, I was back out with my pals, grabbing a late lunch before we headed home. We dropped by the elementary school nearby to pick up Kane's little brother, Kyle. "Hiya kiddo," Kane ruffled Kyle's hair. Kyle grinned, still too young to take offense at a hair fluffing, and hugged Kane tight. "Sup, kid," I said, giving him our usual salute. Kyle saluted right back. I really liked that kid. The bunch of us headed over for shakes and burgers, the best type of lunch after hours of hard training. We had all sat down and ordered our food, when my parents came in with that little shit. I groaned. I knew they had planned this on purpose. Some misguided attempt to induce some brotherly love. "Matt!" the little asshole shouted, his face lighting up upon seeing mine. He ran over, despite my fervent prayers. "Can I join you?" he asked, hope shining on his face. "Get lost, before I make you," I growled. Kane frowned, and Kyle looked shocked and sad. My other friends shifted uncomfortably in their seats. It seemed they would never get used to my attitude towards that piece of shit. "Hey man, he's a kid. Let him," Kane urged. I glared at him. "You don't know anything. Don't push it." "Why are you so mean?" Kyle asked plaintively. I sighed, a long-drawn, exaggerated sigh, and stood up. There was no point arguing with them. I pushed past the sniveling child and muttered angrily, "There. Join them." I got out of the place, ignoring the looks of dismay on my parents' faces as I strode by. Just before the door shut behind me, I couldn't resist turning and yelling at my parents, "Thanks so much," in as sarcastic a way as I could muster. Seeing Kane and the others the next day was uncomfortable, to say the least. They didn't shun me, but things were definitely tense and awkward. As the day passed, we all loosened up and went back to joking and horsing around. Then as we were walking home alone together, Kane tried to talk to me about what had happened. "You used to be so protective of Mikey, so close. You've never shared what exactly happened. But I really want to know. What changed?" I shut my eyes and rubbed my temples in frustration. "I told you to stop bringing it up. I hate that little shit." Kane was about to argue, when we heard a cry ring out ahead of us. I ran forward, recognizing that cry. Kane followed suit. Up ahead, two kids were hovering over a small, curled-up figure. I ran forward, and saw that the two kids were wailing on Mike, who was sobbing, and covering his head with his arms. Redness flashed across my vision. Before I knew it, I had grabbed both kids by the scruff of their necks, and violently pulled them off Mike. "You like beating up on kids smaller than you? You like ganging up on others, you little cowards?" I thundered, shaking them by the collar. Kane ran to Mike and helped him up, turning to yell at the kids. "I'll fucking wipe you out of existence if you ever come near this kid again. Little fuckers." "You got that?" I continued to roar into their petrified faces. "You gonna leave him alone in future?" They nodded, tears streaming down their faces as they broke into pathetic sobs. I dropped them, and watched as they scurried off. I turned back to see Kane's face, still showing major signs of anger, but at the same time, lit with a sort of pride and happiness as his gaze settled on me. And Mike. The little shit was staring up at me, eyes wide, still dribbling tears, and a look of joy slowly spreading across his face. I stopped it right in its tracks. I knelt down and grabbed his collar. "I'm only protecting my little brother. Nobody touches my little brother. So don't think too much of it, you shit-face." Kane stared, confusion scrawled all over his face. Mike dissolved into loud sobs once again. I stood up and walked away. That was not my brother. That thing will never be my brother. I walked determinedly on, not stopping until I had reached the playground. There was no one there, for which I was grateful. I thudded heavily down onto one of the swing seats, then looked toward the other empty one. A sour twang rose from my heart and gushed up the inside of my nose. Before I knew it, I was crying. I missed him terribly. I missed Mike. And it was soon going to be the anniversary of the day when I had failed him. I think he must have told me about his imaginary friend for months, maybe a year, before it happened. His imaginary friend, who didn't have a name. He was abandoned by his mummy. Some bad guy took him home but never gave him a name. Just called him "Hey, you or stupid thing." Isn't that so sad? Mike had exclaimed to me once. That must have been around 2 years ago by now. Mike's eyes had been full of sorrow and kindness, and I couldn't help but marvel at how such a compassionate young boy could have such a dark imagination. I had entertained him, pretending to sympathize with the imaginary friend. "I'm going to name him Jimmy, if he'd like that," he announced. I ruffled Mike's hair. "Yay, little dude, I think he would." I didn't think too much of it then. I had imaginary friends too, when I was younger. It was the norm and Mike would outgrow it, I was sure. Jimmy liked his new name, apparently. Then Mike's chatter about Jimmy began to trouble me. Jimmy's sad. He's never had a chance to live a life like mine. I feel so bad for him. He should get a chance to be as happy as I am. To have family like you. I remember Mike telling me that, just a couple months before I failed him. "That's tough, kid. But he has you as a friend now," I had said. "He's asking if he could have my life, for a while. Just be me for a while." I had raised an eyebrow then. "Like how?" "He wants to borrow my body, live life to the fullest for a year or two, then he'd give it back." I had really begun to be creeped out. At the same time, I had reminded myself that this was just Mike's imaginary friend. He would probably be pretending, acting out some new character or something, even if that supposedly happened. But still, I couldn't help saying, "I think that sounds dangerous. It's your life. And it's your body. And buddy, you're my little bro. Don't want someone else being you." I don't remember for sure how the rest of the conversation went. I think he just kept silent and we kind of changed the topic after. I honestly didn't think much about it after that day. Which I wish I could take back. I should have been more worried, more careful, talked more to Mike about it. But I had a busy life, and in my head, then, Mike just had a really colorful imagination. Until that day, when things fell apart. I remember walking to Mike's room, holding this mini jersey in my hand, all excited to surprise him. Mike had always looked up to me. He was in awe of my position on the basketball team, and he wanted to be just like me when he was older. I got the same jersey I had made for him, with our family name emblazoned on the back, but in a minute size. I was sure he'd be so happy. I was just about to turn the knob on the door, when I heard him speaking, and another voice answering. I still remember the chills and dread that shot through my spine, the tingles I felt in my neck, at the sound of that other voice. "You promise you'll return me my life when you're done?" Mike had been saying. "Yes. In a year or two, max. I promise." That other voice replying. "I'm a little scared," Mike had said. "I know. Thank you so much for doing this. You're so awesome," the other voice said. I opened the door and felt the heaviness in my gut give way to a hollow fear within. A little boy stood facing Mike. A little boy I had never seen before in my life, a little boy who was not all there. I couldn't make out his feet, for one. And his eyes. They were empty swirls, which settled on me as I stood speechless in the doorway. Frozen. Rooted to the spot with a cold, crippling fear. The boy reached out his hands to Mike, who reached out to hold them. My protectiveness kicked in, overpowering my fear. "Mike, get away from it!" I bellowed as I charged towards them, determined to grab Mike and run. I was about a step away from them when the little boy seemed to dissolve into a dark smoke that flowed rapidly into Mike. My body flew into Mike's, grabbing hold of him. The other boy was nowhere to be seen. I grabbed Mike by the shoulders and shook him. Mike seemed unconscious. Then, his eyelids fluttered open. "Hi, Matt." He spoke in the voice I was so familiar with, yet with a tone and cadence that was completely not Mike's. I dropped him and recoiled, stumbling backwards. "You're not Mike." "Yes, I am," he said calmly. "Matt, what's wrong? Why are you scared?" He suddenly sounded a lot more like the Mike I knew. I was confused, fearful, clueless as to what to do. I turned tail and ran to my room, where I spent the night in turmoil. Was it Mike? Did I just imagine that? Was it Mike all along, just playing a game? I couldn't stop the hurricane of thoughts and feelings that ravaged my mind. I got no sleep that night. In the morning, I decided to test it out. I had to know. "Hey Mike," I called out to him when I saw the boy sitting at the table, having cereal. "Hey Matt." The boy called out. He sounded like Mike, all right. "Sup sup," I declared, the signal for our secret handshake. The boy leapt up from the table, excited, just like Mike would be. We carried out the secret handshake, him matching the movements as well as Mike would have. For the most part, our secret handshake is easy. Just grabbing each other by the hand with our right arm, pulling each other close, chest to chest, then pushing off each other with a flourish and a pshhhhh feint and swiping our arm downwards hard. The boy seemed to do all that just right. But a cold fear and a hollow sadness filled my soul. Because he missed it. The one step that couldn't be seen by others, the one step in our secret handshake that I found to be the best part. While grabbing onto our right hands and going chest to chest, Mike would do 2 quick pumps with his hand, and I would respond with 1 quick pump. That boy did not do that. That boy was not Mike. I felt the blood drain from my face. I stepped back and stared at the boy, hatred and anger spilling from my eyes. "You're not Mike. And you will give him back," I said, coldly, furiously. The boy looked confused for a moment, then smiled. He agreed to this. He promised. I have his body for 2 years. I have his life. I leapt forward and grabbed the little shit by the arms, crushing him a little. "He took pity on you. And you took advantage of his kindness," I hissed. He agreed, the boy simply insisted, 1 to 2 years. I think 2 years would be enough. "Get out of him, now!" I yelled, voice breaking. I lifted the boy and shook him a little. "Matt! What the hell, Matt?" I heard my mom's panicked cry and she ran towards me, slapping me on the arm. "Let go of him. What has gotten into you? Shame on you." I numbly let go of the boy. I felt cold inside. Sad, hollow, heavy. Mike was gone. And who knew when this little shit would give him his life back? What if he never did? I walked out of the house as my mom fussed over that evil little fucker. I knew there was no way she would believe me. I had tried a few times after that day, to tell them. They never believed me. And so, that was the day that I had failed Mike. How I had let him be used, let his beautiful, kind soul be sucked in by that little asshole. Now, I just got to hope that Mike would return. One day soon. Pray that that thing would keep its promise and let my brother have his life back, after the 1 to 2 years. I got to get my brother back.